Hi, this is Bob Hatton. This is the Encourager. It's so good that you tuned in again today, and we're going to have a look at the story of Bartimaeus. Bartimaeus is quite an interesting story. It's a well-known story. Bartimaeus, he had nothing. He was unemployed. He was homeless. He couldn't receive any social security. He was so poor, and he was blind. He sat on the side of the road that joined the old city of Jericho to the new city of Jericho, and that's where he sat every day, expecting to get some alms from the people who were passing. We are being attacked this morning with lots of ladybirds, the millions of them here. So excuse me. On this same day, Jesus entered Judea. He was on his long journey from the very north, and he'd come through Galilee and along the side of the River Jordan, crossed the River Jordan, and now entered Judea. This was probably the route that Joshua took when he brought the children of Israel into the Promised Land. The first city that they encountered was the city of Jericho. And so now Jesus has come into Jericho, and there were a lot of people around him. They've heard of him. His reputation had already reached Judea. According to Mark doesn't give us any reports about him ever being in Judea before, but we know from the other writers of the Gospels that he had been there before, and they were expecting him, and a huge crowd was following him from one place to the other. And there was Bartimaeus. He was sitting on the side of the road. This Bartimaeus who hardly had anything. You know, Bartimaeus, Mark tells us, Bartimaeus means the son of Timaeus. He didn't even have his own name. He borrowed his name from his dad. And the only thing that he owned, it seems, was this cloak that he would put around him in the night to keep him warm, and have over his shoulders during the day to cover his thin body. On this day, he had heard also that Jesus was coming into the city, and he'd heard of Jesus before. And the people who were following Jesus, they regarded him as being Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus, the son of the carpenter, who had indeed done some remarkable things. But who was he? Some people said he was the Messiah. Let's see what happens. But you know, Bartimaeus, blind Bartimaeus, he could see more than all the other people, because when he called out to him, he didn't call out to him Jesus of Nazareth, but he began to call out Jesus, son of David. You see, in the Old Testament, there are promises that when the Messiah comes, he will come in the line of David, from the family of David, and he will also occupy the throne of David. And Bartimaeus, he believed that Jesus was this person. So he cried out, and as he began to cry out, the people around him told him to be quiet, because he's more important things to do than deal with this blind beggar who had absolutely nothing. You see, they were in the same mindset as the disciples were thinking that people who were vulnerable, people who needed help to survive, that they were worthless. But these are the first people that Jesus actually calls into his kingdom. And as they told him to keep quiet, he cried even louder, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stopped and commanded that he should be brought over to him. And they brought Bartimaeus to him, and Jesus asked him, what do you want? And what does he want? He wants his sight. Before he approached Jesus, when he got up, he threw away this cloak. And normally a beggar would keep his cloak very close to him, because if he lost the feel of it, he could have lost it forever. He couldn't see it. He didn't know where it was. But when Jesus called him, he threw it away, because he had the impression, I don't need that anymore. And when he came to Jesus, Jesus gave him his sight back. In the last few days, I've read some accounts of Francis of Assisi. Now, of course, Francis of Assisi, he lived in the 12th century. That's a long time ago, so we don't know exactly, his story. But one of the stories I read, and maybe it was it's just a legend and not true, but I thought it was very interesting, was that Francis grew up in a family that was very influential, very rich. He didn't have any care in the world, and he was a kind of a playboy, went to all the parties and so on. When he's a young man, he had to go into the army, fight in a war. He was taken prisoner of war. He put in prison for a whole year until his father paid the ransom and he was freed. He experienced many things during this time of a prisoner of war, and finally that led to him finding Jesus, and he got a vision, a strong burden for the poor people, especially the people suffering from leprosy, and he started to minister to them. Now his father was very angry about this, and when they on one day were having an argument, and the father told him that he had Francis had only had what the father had given to him. He'd given him everything, even the clothes he was wearing. They came from Francis' father. So when Francis heard that, he took off his clothes, he stripped himself naked and threw the clothes at his father's feet and told him he could have them. And while he was standing there naked, some of the people who'd witnessed this argument, they got a sack and they threw it over to Franz, and there was a hole in the bottom and 2 holes in the side, and he put it over his head and put his hands through the sack, and that apparently, as the legend goes, that was the start of the monk's habit. I don't know whether it's exactly true. It may be a little bit far-fetched, a legend, but it just underlines something that we can't keep, that which doesn't belong to us anyway, but by giving things away we get something greater. James Elliot, who was a missionary into South America in the 1950s, when he just arrived in South America to start his work as a missionary, I think he was only there for a few minutes, and together with his colleagues he was killed. He was martyred for the faith before he was able to really do anything. Now before he went into the missions, he wrote something, and he wrote the following. He said, "He is no fool who gives away that he cannot keep." And my challenge to you and to us this morning is, what are we giving away? What is no good to us anyway? What are we giving away so that we can gain something that is more important? God bless you. Have a good day, and I hope to see you again. You're Robert Hatton, your encourager.